49. It's selected verses, because I wasn't going to read the whole thing. And this deals with a blessing. We're talking about the blessing, the Old Testament blessing, for several weeks now. Last week being the first one. This is Jacob calling his sons for him to bless them. Then Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather around that I may tell you what will happen to you in days to come. Assemble and hear, O sons of Jacob. Listen to your father Israel. Reuben, you are my firstborn. Unstable as water, you shall no longer excel. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Zebulun shall settle at the shore of the sea. He shall be a haven for ships. Issachar is a strong donkey. He bowed his shoulder to the burden and became a slave at forced labor. Dan shall judge his people. Gad shall be raided by raiders, but he shall raid at his heels. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall provide royal delicacies. Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears lovely fawns. Joseph is a fruitful bough. The blessings of your father are stronger than the blessings of the eternal mountains. May they be on the head of Joseph. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said to them when he blessed them, blessing each one of them with a suitable blessing. They don't all sound like blessings, do they? I'll talk about that in a little bit. First, a story. Dan grew up in a home where nothing positive was ever said. In fact, little of anything was ever said. His parents seemed to be too busy with their careers or too preoccupied with remodeling the house to do much talking. He didn't seem to matter much to them. For one brief moment, Dan thought he found the key to break through their indifference to him. At the end of 5th grade, Dan received an excellent report card with nearly all A's. For the first time in his memory, his parents openly spoke words of praise. At last, he felt like somebody. Like a starving man who stumbles across a loaf of bread, Dan thought he had learned the key to hearing words of acceptance. Overachieve. Do everything well, and his parents would like him. Acceptance was worth the hours spent inside studying while the neighborhood kids played right outside his window. It was worth it just to hear those few words of affirmation at the end of the semester. This overachieving lasted all the way through college. Dan's need for words of acceptance outlasted the years he spent in school. As a result, he took his motivation to show them I'm somebody right into the marketplace. Dan became the perfect junior executive, which translated means he became a workaholic, always driven to achieve more and more, regardless of personal and relational costs. Finally, Dan realized he was tired. He was very tired. He didn't know his wife. He missed the growing up years of his children. He didn't give them what he desired from his own parents, acceptance and love. He didn't know how, because he'd never received it himself. So last week I began talking about the blessing bestowed by the Old Testament patriarchs on their children, and how Gary Smalley and John Trent discovered 5 elements of the blessing that can be brought into the contemporary family setting. The blessing begins with meaningful touch, which I talked about last week, and it's not just tapping somebody on the shoulder. It's a good hug or a strong handshake. It's being there with people. The blessing continues with a spoken message of high value, a message that pictures a special future for the individual being blessed, and one that is based on an active commitment to see the blessing come to pass. This week I want to talk about spoken message of high value. Words have incredible power to build us up or to tear us down emotionally. The family blessing in the Old Testament hinged on being spoken. Isaac, if you remember from last week, Isaac spoke the blessing to his son Jacob. Jacob then spoke a blessing to each of his 12 sons and to 2 of his grandchildren as well. Blessings and curses were not retractable once spoken. It was believed there was real power in the spoken word. Again, if we remember last week, Esau was so excited when he was called by his father. He knew after years of waiting that he would finally receive the blessing from his father. The power of the spoken word helps explain the depth of Esau's distress to learn that Jacob had received the blessing in his place. He gave out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry. He said, "Bless me, even me also, O my father." Isaac's spoken word could not be taken back. In the New Testament, we know that Jesus spoke to all kinds of people. Last week I mentioned the leper who came to him begging to be cleansed. And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him. And then he spoke to him. Both things were unheard of in Jesus' day and time. To speak to a leper and then also to reach out and touch them. I also think about the woman who was caught in adultery. Jesus didn't curse her or condemn her to death. Can you imagine how blessed she felt for him to turn to the men who had brought her to him and say, "Whoever among you has not sinned, let him cast the first stone." And then he told her to go on with her life and sin no more. Or what about the woman with the issue of blood? For 12 years she had suffered as an outcast. No one would speak to her or touch her. She knew the power of touch. All she wanted to do was touch the hem of Jesus' robe. And when she did so, he felt power go out of him, and he stopped to speak to the one who had touched him. And then he spoke to her, and he told her it was her faith that had healed her, to go in peace and to be freed from her suffering. Life can be so hectic for many parents that just right time to talk to the kids never seems to happen. Perhaps a mother wants to share a special word with her daughter in the bride's room just before the wedding. But the photographer has to take her away to get that special shot. Or maybe a father tries to corner his son to tell him how he feels about him before he goes off to college or off to the military. But the son is too busy right now to just listen. Smalley and Trent write of the thief loose in many homes who masquerades as fulfillment, accomplishment, and success, and is played out through overactivity. One woman even said to Smalley and Trent, "Who has time to stop and tell them?" Spoken words of blessing need to start in the delivery room and continue throughout life. This reminds me of when my daughter was born. She's 43 now. She'll be 44 next month. So almost 44 years ago, I remember being in the delivery room. Let me tell you first that her uncle, my former husband's oldest brother, died in a car accident on Sunday, and she was born on Saturday. So that whole week we were in kind of a turmoil, trying to figure out what he needed to do, stay with me or go back home. But one thing is that we had come up with a girl's name, but we hadn't come up with a boy's name. And it wasn't until Wednesday, before she was born on Saturday, that we decided the baby would be named after her uncle. But it turned out that she was born a girl. And I remember, and I tell Andy almost every year at her birthday, and her daughters know this, I laughed out loud when the doctor said, "You have a girl." I didn't realize how much I wanted a girl until she was actually born. And I can remember that, laughing out loud with joy when she was born. The lack of time and the idea that there's still time to tell them tomorrow rob children of a needed blessing today. And the thing is that most of us are close to being grandparent age, if not already. And we can give this blessing to our grown children and to our grandchildren. It's not like we missed out completely. We can still do it if we haven't done it yet. Parents might say, oh, it's not that big a deal. They know I love them and they're special without my having to say it. But you know, silence communicates a lot to people and leaves them uncertain of how we feel and think about them. I was probably 28, 30 years old, and my mom and I met in Junction City. I lived in Salina, she was in Topeka, and we'd meet there to hand off the kid. If Andy was going to my mom's, that's where we'd meet, or if mom was bringing her back, that's where we'd meet. And I can't remember the rest of the conversation, but I do remember asking my mom, are you proud of me? And she said, oh my goodness, Billie, of course I am. Surely you know that. Surely I've said that. And I said, no, Mom, you hadn't. And it meant so much to me that even now at 70 years of age, I remember that conversation with my mom. And then a few years later, my mom was dying. I was 36. And I had a conversation with my grandmother, my mom's mom, on the phone. And when we got ready to hang up, I said, I love you, Grandma. And she said, me too. And I said, Grandma, have you told Mom that you love her? Oh, she knows I do. I said, no. Grandma, we know she's dying. Have you told her that you love her? She said, no, I haven't. I'll think about it. And I do know that before Mom died, Grandma did say, I love you. And it meant a great deal to my mom at 60 years of age. Why is it so hard to speak words of blessing? Smalley and Trent have heard these reasons. I don't want to inflate my child's ego. I'm afraid if I praise them, they'll take advantage of me and won't finish their work. I just don't know what to say. They know I love them without my having to say it. If I get started, I'll have to make a habit of it. If the truth be known, according to Gary Smalley and John Trent, the reason many people hesitate to bless their children or others with spoken words of love and acceptance is because their parents never gave this part of the blessing to them, and they don't know how. It's really never too late to bless our children or our spouses or our friends or even our parents. My intention with this sermon series is not to put anyone on a guilt trip for not blessing their children or other loved ones in the past. I also have no intention of giving people reasons to blame their mom and dad for how they turned out today. My hope instead is to increase our awareness that we can bless people from this day forward. Every single day we can do this. I have another story. It was a busy day for this mother of 10 children with another one on the way. This particular day, she was having difficulty doing even the everyday chores because of one little girl. Lucy was only 3, and she was at her mother's heels every moment, no matter where she went. Patiently, Mom kept suggesting that she go do some fun activity. Don't you want to go out and play on the swing? Or how about a fun game with your brother? And always the answer was, with an engaging smile, oh, no, Mommy, I'd rather be with you. After almost stepping on Lucy for the 5th time, Mom, losing her patience a little, insisted that she go out and play with the other children. When she asked her why she was acting this way, with that same engaging smile, Lucy said, Mommy, my Sunday school teacher told me to walk in Jesus' footsteps. I can't see him, so I'm walking in yours. Mommy gathered up Lucy, feeling blessed and valued by her daughter. She thanked God with a prayer in her heart for the beautiful perspective of a 3-year-old child. The third element of the blessing is expressing high value when speaking to others. So what do I mean by expressing high value? To value something is to attach importance to it. In the scriptures, to value something means to give it honor. In Hebrew, the root meaning of blessing is to bow the knee. The root word is used of a man who had his camel bend his knees so he could get on it. The word came to mean, in relation to God, to adore with bended knees. Bowing before someone is a graphic picture of valuing that person. So just think about that when we think about a man proposing to a woman, the value that he gives her by bending his knee in front of her. This is a way of honoring somebody. We don't have to bend the knee when we give someone high value. When we bless someone, we're aware that this person has high value. We might not actually bend at the knee before them, but we are recognizing their intrinsic value and telling them that they are highly valued. The Old Testament patriarchs attached high value to their children with the family blessing. This is what I read this morning in Jacob's blessing to his 12 sons. And we notice that not all were blessed in the manner that we think of as blessing. The word bless can also mean curse in the Old Testament. So we have to be very careful when we read Old Testament blessings to understand what is being said about a person. Some of those blessings that I read from Genesis 49 certainly do not sound like blessings. And that's hard to think about a father using a blessing, which is actually a curse, on a son. That's hard to understand. It's hard for us to understand. I think in many ways, Isaac was being truthful and also seeing who his sons were turning out to be. These were not children. These were grown men who were being blessed by their father. Smalley and Trent believe that a message that expresses high value is exactly what a child needs to hear today. We know in the schools they need to hear these as well. Smalley and Trent believe that this concept of valuing another is so important that it can be found at the heart of every healthy relationship. So a question for us today is, do we value the people around us? Are we aware of their presence, of their uniqueness, and do we tell them so? Telling children they are valuable can be difficult for many parents. I mentioned that sometimes the urgent demands of a busy schedule can crowd out the just right times to talk with children. The tyranny of the urgent takes control of life, and the important things like building relationships and expressing our love gets pushed to the side. Children and spouses and employees and coworkers and friends often only hear words of value when they perform well. Do the job good, and get good grades. When these are the only times that words of value are expressed, the words lose their impact and leave a nagging uncertainty about what's important. Am I loved for who I am, or only for what I do? Smalley and Trent offer a communication tool for picturing a person's valuable qualities and character traits apart from a person's performance. The tool is called Word Pictures, and they've written an entire book about this titled Language of Love, a powerful way to maximize insight, intimacy, and understanding. We use many word pictures all the time, things like strong as an ox, he's just pulling your leg, or stuck in a rut. She's as red as a beet. That was a close shave. It was mashed as flat as a pancake. They're like 2 peas in a pod. That baby is as cute as a button. He's nice, but the elevator doesn't go to the top floor. Jacob used word pictures when he called his sons a lion cub, or a doe let loose, and a fruitful bough. A lion is a symbol of strength and expressed the strength of character that Judah possessed. The doe was considered graceful and gentle and depicted the artistic qualities of Naphtali. Joseph was called a fruitful bough, which was an expression of his faithful trust in God, which eventually led to his providing a place of refuge for his family during a drought and famine. Smalley and Trent say there are 4 elements to word pictures that honor a person. The first element is the use of everyday objects in word pictures, which bring a deeper level of understanding. Another story. A baby was born in December. As Nancy grew older, her parents would repeatedly say, "Just remember you're God's special Christmas gift to us, a gift of great price because you're so special to us." And every Christmas they would put a gift-wrapped box under the tree addressed from Jesus to Nancy's parents. And every year Nancy had the honor of opening this gift, and inside was her baby picture. When Nancy turned 30, she was having difficulty with growing older. At her lowest point, she received a small package in the mail from her parents. Inside was her baby picture and a note from her folks. She always knew she was special to her parents. That day, she needed to know she was special. A second element of word pictures is to match the emotional meaning of the trait you're praising with the object you've picked. In other words, if you want to tell your child that she is gentle, don't compare him or her with a mother bear. If you want to tell your child she or he is gentle, don't compare her or him with a mother bear. I'm thinking of an angry, protective mother bear. That's not gentle. A modern day example. The oldest daughter in the family was helpful and protective of her younger brother and sister. Mother thought of the tender care that Mother Kitty gave her kittens and compared her daughter's actions to the mother cat. The daughter beamed as she thought of the gentle, protective way the cat acted with her kittens. This girl's mother gave her a living illustration of how valuable she was to her mother. Third element of word pictures. Word pictures tend to unravel our defenses. People can hear better what we're saying through the use of word pictures. An example is when the young woman in the Song of Solomon first meets the young man, she says, "Do not look upon me because I am dark, because the sun has tanned me." She's insecure about her appearance and she doesn't want the man to look at her. Later, after hearing his words of love for her, she calls herself the Rose of Sharon, the lily of the valley. Her perspective about herself changed because the young man's words broke through her defenses. We listen to praise more intently when it comes packaged in a word picture. Word pictures capture our attention. And the fourth element of a word picture is that word pictures point out a person's potential, not just who they are now, but who they can be in the future. Jesus used a mini word picture when he called Simon by the name Peter, which in Greek literally means rock. Peter certainly didn't act like a rock when he tried to talk Jesus out of going to the cross, when he fell asleep in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he denied Jesus 3 times. After the resurrection, though, he did become the rock that Jesus knew him to be. There was a young woman whose husband divorced her and left her with 2 small children to care for. She faced one struggle after another as she tried to care for her family with no marketable skills or experience in the workforce. 6 years later, she had a good job that allowed her to spend time with her children and still meet their basic financial needs. When asked what her greatest source of help was, she spoke of her dad, who continually told her every time she wanted to quit school or just give up, "Jenny, you'll make it. You're my rock of Gibraltar." Jenny didn't feel like a rock, but she kept on plugging away because her father offered her a picture of hope. So to review, there are 4 elements to the use of word pictures. It's important to use everyday objects to create a word picture. It's important to match the emotional meaning of the trait with the object that's chosen. Word pictures can unravel our defenses and touch us at a deeper place. And word pictures can point to a person's potential. There's a well-known saying that says, "A picture is worth 1,000 words." When we link word pictures with a message of high value, we can multiply our message 1,000 times. Jesus used word pictures throughout the gospel as he describes the kingdom of God for his followers, as he teaches in parables about the lost coin, the lost sheep, the seeds along the path. He uses word pictures as he spoke of himself as the good shepherd who watched over the flock, the bread of life that would provide spiritual nourishment, the vine that could bring spiritual sustenance. By using everyday objects, Jesus was able to penetrate the wall of insecurity and distrust that people had put up, because stories hold a key to our hearts in a way that mere words do not. My hope is that we can be transformed into the likeness of Christ, and in doing so we can encourage and empower those around us to be more fully who they are meant to be, by our spoken words of high value, by meaningful touch. These are 3 of the 5 elements of the blessing. I encourage you to practice these 3 elements over the next weeks. And the next Sunday I'm here, we'll be looking at a special future and active commitment as parts of the blessing as well. May you know God's loving care and Jesus' presence as you speak and hopefully hear meaningful words spoken with high value for you. Amen. Amen.